Welcome to Viva La Visionary, the podcast that celebrates the innovative ideas and mindsets of entrepreneurs and visionaries. Join your host, Coach Bob Schittefeld, as he dives into inspiring stories and practical insights from trailblazers who are changing the game. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or a seasoned leader, this show is your source for motivation and creativity. Let's embark on this exciting journey together.
Hi there, Coach Bob here, host of the podcast Viva La Visionary, and it's all about learning with and from and about visionaries, and very excited to have Jenna Dillon here this morning. Jenna, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So great to get to know you over the last probably 9 months, and our relationship to me is a true example of what I'm all about, meaning, and what we've created with the Visionary Forum. And it's about, learning with other visionaries and creating community and being accepted and again, learning and teaching. So I so appreciate all that you've taught me and all that you've given back to the community. So starting off with a simple question I'd like to start off with. Jenna, why are you on this planet? What are you here for?
Yeah, I would say I love it. Gosh, that's great. I would say, let's just go deep right away, right, Bob? I would say overarchingly, like in the various hats that we all wear, with the hats that I wear, I think the through line for me is to really just find connections with people that are meaningful and give and receive love. I mean, I think that is the overarching thing that I'm here for. And being able to have those deep connections takes various aspects of each person that you're with, right? Like how vulnerable are they willing to be? How vulnerable am I willing to be?
Right.
Courage, so much there, but the through line is to give and receive love.
That pretty much says it all. So we're all done for the day. No. It's so fascinating because people ask me, and I get chills as we're talking about it. And we, just got off of our 7th summit, which you were one of the 3 amazing teachers and presenters. And people are asking me, how do you sum it up? And to me, it was a community of creativity and love. And, and it's hard to explain what that is. And even just with our theme being unlearn, unattach, and unleash, as I was mentioning to you earlier, I learned so much from that on how I've been taught, and I've been taught to be in fear. I've been taught to question, what's, someone trying to take advantage. And it's like, what is that? And so to unlearn that has been amazing. And then I've been so taught on how to set goals. And if I don't hit those goals, I'm not successful. And so we had such great conversations around that. And it is about connection, community, love, giving and receiving. That's fantastic. So would you consider yourself a visionary?
Absolutely.
I thought so. And and I knew that, when did you realize you were a visionary?
I was actually thinking about this the other day, and I don't know if I have a pinpointed answer, because I feel like it was slowly starting to unleash, if we're going to use some of those same words. The beast inside me was starting to unleash. I think there were just different iterations of unlearning and realizing more of who I am, and putting the mirror up in front of me and going, I have a desire to do things differently. I have a desire to serve others in a really big way. I have this interest in, when I was a kid, I would bond with my father people watching, because I was so interested in why people did what they did and what their reasoning was and their behavior and how they presented themselves. And so I feel like there were all these little breadcrumbs for most of my life. And so to pinpoint an exact time when I realized it, I don't know if I could really say it. I mean, I knew my first career was as a professional dancer, and I had always been my own boss during that.
Right.
And so when I was, and studying business management and various things that led me into executive coaching later in my next career, I feel like there were always things about me where it was I'm going to be a boss, or I'm going to be serving people, and it's going to be on my terms, because it's going to be an entity that I want to be creating and build. So it was almost like well, this is just what's going to happen. It was
Right.
never another thought otherwise. Or if people would say, oh, well, do you want to go get a job like with an employer? I just go, no, actually, I don't want that. Like,
I'm unemployable, right?
Yeah. So I think, everyone has their own journey, of course, but I think some people, it's almost like, and I think part of it might've been too, one of my parents has always been a visionary.
Right.
And so seeing that modeled, but I also had modeled the other way too, where they were working for an employer. And I think I just always assumed, oh no, like this is what I'm going to do. This is who I am. And this is how
Right.
to, be authentic to that.
Right. So you mentioned serving. Do you think most visionaries, and I don't like to over stereotype things, but do you think most visionaries are caring and serving?
I do. I think that there are different iterations of it.
Right.
Because I actually really loved what you said earlier, Bob, around this idea of being a student, being curious and valuing learning.
Right.
Like that humility and curiosity, I value so much. And I think that is such a deep part of why I want to continue to give and receive love. And I think that can only happen the more that we are humble and curious about each other and about life. But I do find that because of that, if we are curious and humble, then we will always find new things about ourselves and about how the world works and about each other that we didn't see before or we didn't know before. And so thus then our intention and focus can change to, rather than serving, to learning and looking inside ourselves, and even when we're in the process of doing that, it doesn't mean we aren't serving. It just means that's not a focus. Like we could be inherently still serving by modeling being humble or, modeling learning. But, in terms of intentionality and focus, I think it can change. And so that's why I say, like, I think there's different iterations of how we can serve, I do find that, and I wonder what you see just over the course of your career. I find that there's visionaries who, the more ego they have, and of course I say this respectfully because we all have been at fault, myself included, at this, is the more ego we have, the more we have this idea that is false of like, I have to make sure that I am serving my community. And it's almost like this hierarchy of I'm better than, or have to appear better than. And that's really a bunch of BS. I mean, like there's a time and place where yes, like you might be more skilled and you might have you might be the decision maker, but to come at it with this ego as though you're better than, that's actually the very thing that's not going to make you and everyone around you better. And so I think that it's a really big thing that leaders can learn and develop in themselves to always value is this curiosity, this learning. And so that's the way that they serve, has different iterations.
Yeah, no, and I love that. The reason I asked is a lot of people, I feel, think that we visionaries are self-centered and self-serving. And I think it's definitely, again, different iterations, but I also realize that a lot of us visionaries are driven and maybe have some imposter syndrome. And so we've got our head down to prove ourselves, to then say, look what I've done. And then Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey and, that call to adventure. But then also I know I've been this, like, it's my job to be the hero. And it's like, wow, that's kind of cool for a little bit, but it's also a lot of work. And so what I find is most visionaries, at least the ones that I've come across, do want to serve, do love to serve, do care, but also don't even know how to do that or to be that. And that's what, again, I found with a lot of us, especially with our peer group that we've created, is, wait, I don't have to do anything else to be successful. I just have to be, not have to, an opportunity is for me to be me. But is that enough? And it's like, it is. It's all people want. It's why my wife married me. It's why my employees have followed me and customers. And then when I try to be something or do something else, that's when then it isn't authentic and maybe isn't curiosity. So I think it's interesting. It's kind of, getting us visionaries just to slow down and care a little bit and not be quite so driven.
Well, and I think, like I think it's this, I don't know if everyone that listens to this podcast is familiar with these terms, but I know we've talked about this, is this idea of you have intrinsic leadership skills and you have extrinsic leadership skills. And so often, I think, when people were looking at leaders and there were norms around what it meant to be a leader that was based off of extrinsic leadership
Right.
skills, like their technical skills, how they have to, what it means to lead and manage people became this very transactional, almost like micromanaging
Right.
thing. And it's really started to evolve into this idea of servant leadership. And so even how someone, like the norms around what it means to be a leader and an admirable, respectable, inspiring leader, that includes a whole other different type of skill sets where they
Right.
actually have to look inside themselves and build these intrinsic leadership skills on who am I?
Right.
How do I show who I am authentically? How do I create an environment where I can be vulnerable in a very specific way to build trust, in a very
Right.
helpful way to build camaraderie, to build here's a technical term, psychological safety,
Right.
so it can foster creativity, so it can foster risk taking in a helpful way to problem solve. That is very different, having a leader who is trusting in their teams because they're creating leaders within their teams to be self-sufficient while also collaborate together. And they're not hovering like a helicopter. But like I said, intrinsic and extrinsic skills are required. So it's different leadership styles and different norms around what it means to be a leader.
Right. Right. So how would you define, what are some of the roles, or what's my job as a visionary?
Oh boy. I think a big part of their role, I mean, it's vision. Like they see and have that foresight and get excited and know how to get people on board and excited to get on that train, if you will,
Right.
about where that company or where their company is going. And they can build that advocacy. They can connect with not just their internal group, their internal staff, but also external, their community, their
Right.
clients, they have that ability to build the advocacy. So I definitely think that's a part of it. But if we're going back to like them individually in order to be successful, gosh, if I could just dumb it down into the most layman terms, it's humble, curiosity, having drive, like that determination and tenacity. And then I would also say this idea of, curiosity, grit, humility, we mentioned earlier. And then I'd say ownership. Like they know how to take ownership on not just clearly stating what their role is. They know how to bestow and build ownership in others. They know how to own if they've made a mistake and know how to model that. So I think that's another, all of those underlying, like.
Right. No, I love that. Thank you. And what's one thing that you've learned either for yourself or some of the visionaries that you've been coaching that would be one piece of experience share to say, hey, when I learned this or one of my clients learned that, what would be one, not a piece of advice, but experience share to say, hey, when I realized this, it really catapulted me on a different trajectory, hopefully upward for vision.
You hope upward. So I actually have two that came to mind, and I'll be quick about them. But
That's fine.
one that was really pivotal to me was the first time I realized I was reading a book. It was right when I was starting to get into personal development, not just professional development. I hadn't even become a coach yet. Didn't even know it existed yet. But I was reading a book by Marianne Williamson, Return to Love. And in the middle of reading this book, it just started hitting me. Like it felt like a lightning bolt went straight through my system. And it was so evident how I had been treating myself horribly most of my life. And it didn't even occur to me until I was like in the middle of reading this book. And so I would say that was going, oh, I didn't realize that I was treating myself not too well and that I could treat myself better. It hadn't even registered. And then, so that was one is once I realized that the relationship I have to myself is and this is not speaking from an ego or a narcissistic standpoint at all, but if we aren't looking at how we're treating ourselves, we will unintentionally have that autopilot with others in ways that we won't usually see. But also we won't realize how we're training or teaching people how to treat us in the exact same way. And that was the next thing that I learned after that. But the second point that I would say, and this is something that it continues to happen in its various forms, we're never done. We're never done learning. We've never summited and arrived. We've never like gotten, oh, now I'm evolved. I've gotten as high as I can be. And that's it. You know, like there's all these, and this is something I actually really love about us as humans is we're really complex. And some people are like, oh my gosh, it's a complex and it's like suffocating or like a lot to take in. But I actually look at it and go, well, we're so complex, even us knowing ourselves, that there's all kinds of ways that these old patterns and habits can show itself and have residue. And it's good to look at and see when you can catch it. It can happen. It usually happens, and it comes up in all these other shapes and forms because it was ingrained in us from all these other years of us learning or teaching ourselves of how we thought the world was supposed to work and how we were supposed to live in it. You know, and so I think that it's like, hey, you're never done. And that's actually a gift because there's so many more things that you can learn and appreciate and value and be humbled by and learn from others and be a part of this community called life and the people in it. So that.
I love it. Yeah. So quick comment on both of your comments. The first one, it's amazing how, I mean, I did a blog years ago that the biggest bully I've ever known is me to myself. And it's just when I realized the conversation in my head, it was brutal. And I'm like, okay, that's not very cool. So I've you know, with our book, Unscatter the Chatter, it's creating great relationships, and that's practicing with you. And then when I'm with my daughter or my son or my wife, it's like I've already been practicing. At the end of the day, it's with myself. And boy, it's amazing how humans, but especially I think us driven visionaries, a lot of times we just beat the crap out of ourselves. And so to shift that conversation is huge. And then the other thing that you mentioned that we're always learning, I posted something yesterday listening to Ram Dass, as a spiritual healer that my wife and I listen to a lot. And he talked about that that many of us are on the line of mystery, on the edge of mystery. And the unknown. And if we have real faith, one of two things can happen. Either when I step across that line in wonder and curiosity and love, not fear, either there's steady ground to stand on, or we're going to learn how to fly. And it's like, that was so cool. And again, I think one of the things that we visionaries are good at and kind of like is the unknown and the mystery. But if I go into it in fear, what am I going to get? And so back to your point about, you know, love, that it's like, you know what, and trust and faith that it's all going to work out, you know, and again, it's, you know, not bet it all and some crazy thing, but to have a team. So I love that the unknown and that constantly learning is huge. That's awesome. So what, explain, so what, I know you're an executive coach and you've coached me. So can you explain, so what is it that you do for your clients? I mean, I know you're a coach, but what does that mean?
Yeah. So often when I start working with my clients, they have hit a point in their career and even in their organization or organizations, if they have multiple companies, where they're at this intersection where up until this point, they have been able to develop themselves through the different situations and scenarios that they're in. But when they come to me, it's because they have been tapped out and the environment is calling upon them to be more and be able to accomplish more in a way that they don't know how to do that. Like, they're like, I feel trapped. Like, you know, it'll show up in like, they feel trapped going, I'm working my tail off and it's 60 plus hours a week and I'm burning the candle at both ends and I can't slow down even though I'm exhausted and overwhelmed, because if I slow down, it's at the detriment of me and everyone involved in the organization. And that's not acceptable. That's terrible. I feel so responsible, right? So that's one trap. Another trap is where they feel like a little apathetic. Like they've been doing that first scenario so long that then they just get a little numb, and it's kind of like they stop caring.
Yep.
Like
Right.
they're a little just apathetic, and they're like, yeah, I don't like, they kind of just lose that fire in
Right.
them. And that's actually a very, even though it seems on the surface very simple emotionally, it's very complex, emotionally, mentally, cognitively, all that. And so that's another. But then the third, and I find this also quite interesting, as I say, they'll have a little business affair. Well, they'll go and like it's things start getting a little chaos or stressful and overwhelmed in one entity, and so they're like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna put that under the rug, and I'm going to go build another entity and focus on this.
Right.
And that'll be real fun, and that'll get me excited. And see, this is going great. Like,
Right. Right.
so they start like building these like business affairs, if you will, because they don't know how to look at that other thing. And so when I start working with them, when I was at the summit, as you know, like one of the things that I really love looking at is being able to understand. And this is why I don't just work with visionaries. I work with chief officers in companies, like top leaders in companies, is because I, over the course of my career, have been able to identify different traits and behaviors and patterns that come with being a high performer. And when you can be able to codify and thus then spot how they are a high performer, good, bad, all of the ways, then I've been able to figure out, how do we hack that, and how do we have these high performers who have accomplished so much have unintentionally created a system or set of repetitive patterns and tendencies that actually prevent them from growing more because they've hit this cap, right?
Right.
And I've realized how they've done that, and I know how to hack it. And so I know how to help them break through the glass ceiling that they unintentionally created and get out of that. And really, it's when I work with each client, it's super customized because everyone can have similarities, but it's also very different. Like, what are those gaps? How are they a high performer in a way that's limiting them? And how can we help them reinvent what they're capable of and accomplish things nobody ever has, and be a thought leader, right? Well, those pieces or those ingredients that person needs is going to be very different from the next client like that I get after that. And so not only are those ingredients different of how they can grow and what they need to change in terms intrinsically or extrinsically, right, in their leadership style, but it also is the order in which we go in that's going to be best for them to learn, like where we start and then where we go next after that. So it's very customized, very tailored, but we're very results driven. So we look at those short term and long. I mean, you laugh, we're not just talking about how can we be more confident and treat ourselves better. We are, but that's not at all the only thing that we're looking at. We're looking at very metric based, because we want them to get a return back from the investment of energy that they're using. Like, how can they be able to make more money than they thought they could, get more time back? Like, if they're working around the clock, how can they not just justify the time meeting with me, but get so much more of their time back from knowing how to, learning how to do that, right? So, I mean, that's really the process. And I know it was kind of like point of concept, but because it's so tailored and customized, that's really it, yeah.
And so, and what was the word you used? And I apologize, but it's phenomena, or what was the word?
Oh, you like that term.
I love that. What is it again?
Phenomenology.
Right.
Yeah. So my training, at least some of my training at the very beginning, was through phenomenology, which is the study of perception.
Right.
Also ontological coaching and transformational coaching. Those were a lot of what I got trained in early on in my career, outside of learning the sciences of psychology, sociology, neuroscience, all of that. And at least from a high level, I am not a neuroscientist, to be clear. But yeah, so really, like, the phenomenology concept, I know at the summit you like when I can describe what that is. And so to explain that a little bit more is, my role in a meeting with a client, and I'm going to speak to the context of how the meeting goes versus the content of what we talk about, is, my job is to help them understand, well, first for me, to understand how are things occurring to them. What is their perception and how they're viewing themselves, the world around them, the rules in which how the world works, etc. And then how can I get them to see what their view is?
Right.
Right. And so that when they can be aware of how they're viewing the world, not saying it's wrong, not saying it's right, just so they know it, then I can partner with them and almost say, okay, now that you see this, come sit next to me, figuratively speaking,
Right.
and let's look at how you're viewing this and see,
Right.
like, is there anything we're missing here? How can we problem solve and actually assess how you're viewing the world,
Right.
so that we can increase awareness, increase discernment, increase emotional intelligence and ability to be able to manage themselves and make decisions under stressful circumstances.
Right. No, I love that. And when you coached me, one of the times you've coached me, and I used our group of amazing visionaries to kind of share my timeline to give context of kind of where I'm at today. And as I went through that in a safe space of non-judgment, and it was a lot of negative things, but it was just kind of sharing how when I trusted something and then I felt like I got let down. And that was, as a kid, and then with my coaches and with, in school. And then I believed in magic. And then I was kind of like, well, I guess that isn't real. So I'll just go and be like everyone else. And I realized I couldn't exist like everyone else. And it was such a great experience. And my wife was even like, wow, you had a lot of trauma in there. And then nothing was horrible, but it was just a lot of little things. But then as I got that conversation out of my head, I realized that was a ceiling I was putting on myself to say, you know what, I don't get rewarded when I trust and when I serve. And then I realized it's like, you know what, it wasn't the right time. And I learned, how did I learn? And what was my ownership of how I showed up? And so that was a groundbreaking shift for me to say, you know what, it's a new time, a new age, and look at all the things and people that I did trust and how they worked out. But it was that chatter in my head. So you really helped me a lot with just recognizing some things that were still rumbling in my head and even putting it out there. And people are like, yeah, I get it. Oh, I've been there. And then people still gave me a hug and loved me. And it's like, oh, wow. And that's been the power of the group. But I just wanted to thank you for helping me to be the observer for myself, because that's not easy to do.
It's not easy to do. And I thank you for trusting in me to help you and coach you. It was such a privilege. And it is something that, it takes two to tango.
Right.
Coaching is not for the faint of heart,
right.
Nor is being a visionary. I think that's something I've come to really respect and appreciate, value, admire, and be inspired by, is the more people that I surround myself who are vulnerable, who are brave, who are willing to be seen, willing to go into certain conversations like coaching, like even the one that we had, Bob. You didn't know, I didn't know where the coaching conversation was going to lead us, but we kind of were like locking arms and seeing what we were going to find out. And that can be really difficult for some people. Right. So thank you. It took two to tango.
All right. No, that's awesome. I appreciate that. So what's the one thing either you're kind of working on, or an opportunity, or that visionaries are working on that is an opportunity right now, whether it be in your business or something you see a common thread for visionaries? So what's kind of an opportunity visionaries or you're working on as a visionary?
Yeah. I actually see a through line, and this can happen often. So I will start off by saying, something that I am working on right now is also something my clients are working on. And I like—
That's usually how it goes.
Well, yes, but I actually really like sharing that, because I do feel like when people start working with an executive coach, they can easily create this idea of, oh, because I'm coaching them, I got it all figured out for myself, and that's not true.
Right.
I have two coaches for myself right now, because I'm also human,
Right.
And we can't do surgery on ourselves. So I can help people on things that maybe I haven't done, because it's a surgery on itself you can't do, right? All that to say is a through line that I see is, and it's a cool challenge and opportunity to have, is when you've identified, oh, I kind of have these iterations in my work capacity where I'm like, oh, I'm at my work capacity. I'm going just past that line where I'm getting a little like stressed, right? And I don't want to be working as much as I am. So where do I need to grow and learn how to be more optimal? Like, where do I need to systemize, automate? Where do I need to train or work with my assistant or my team, right? Like those iterations, like that's currently something that a season that I'm in, that's a season most of my clients are in right now.
Right.
For various reasons, like, whenever a company is in a growth phase, or even if they're downsizing or there's a merger and acquisition, succession planning, whatever it is, there can be a lot of things on their plate where outside of the role that they're doing on a regular basis, they also have this. They also have this change. They also have this succession planning, or they also have this let's build a contingency plan because we just had the fires happen in LA, right? Like, or whatever it is. And so because of that, visionaries, I find, are constantly having opportunities and challenges or opportunities to figure out, how do I optimize right now? And I think the more that they can learn and build that muscle, the better it will be each time they come back to asking themselves that question.
Right.
So yeah, I would say that for sure.
So I love that. I see a lot of, when I'm coaching visionaries and with myself, it's we're in the business too often, and that is not optimizing, because I'm brilliant at certain things and I'm not good at a lot of other things. And so, but a lot of times visionaries are like, what am I supposed to do as a visionary? It's like, just to be you. And it's about having great conversations and building relationships. And we see gaps that I think a lot of other people don't, to say, no one else is doing this. Could we? Or if people are doing that, can we? And again, I think optimize is a great word. And I'm going through that right now as I've shifted my focus from raising my kids, and now one's married and one's off playing baseball in college. And we got to see him a lot the last couple of weeks. And so now it's kind of like, okay, what's next? And that's to be the visionary and I don't want to run a business. So how do I optimize what I'm great at in love? And a lot of that is coaching. And it's not just people are paying me to coach them. It's coaching my team. It's coaching my employees. It's coaching my kids. And then ultimately coaching myself. A lot of the stuff that we've created with I Matter and our book, it's for me to listen, because the answers are inside when I take time to listen. So that's been an interesting thing. So my last question is, about a year ago in our conversations with our Visionary Forum, and, as we grow, we hit the ceiling of complexity. And so that's when optimization comes in for business, something like EOS and the people and the process. And that's great. And a lot of times either we as visionaries get shoved aside, or we feel like we're shoved aside. It's not because of the systems, but to me, it's it's, process and systems and spirit and magic and creativity and relationships. And so the person who introduced us, John LaDuca, came up with and said, it's Viva La Visionary. And so that has become our rally cry. So what does Viva La Visionary mean to you?
Yeah, I think I think it's many things. I think it's keep being you. The world needs you. You bring value in so many ways that people who aren't visionaries don't have, or it's not in their nature, or it's not what they're skilled and what their strengths are. And
right.
We need you to balance it out. And so Viva La Visionary, like long live the visionary, and respect and admire and inspire. I'm inspired by them. And so and even as a visionary, I can be inspired by other visionaries. I am.
Absolutely.
Right? And so, yeah, it's like, hey, like they are trailblazers, and they are people that are on the forefront of humanity continuing to evolve. They really are. They're the ones taking risks. They're the ones that can show us more about what we are capable, who we really are, and what that means, innovating around problem solving, how we're going to use other resources differently, all of that. They are at the forefront of how we evolve. And isn't that a gift? We need that psychologically. We need that to grow. We need that to survive. We need that to keep things novel and interesting. So Viva La Visionary.
I love it. So one other thing just bubbled up for me, that when you mentioned this to the group recently, that, well, the life of the leader in me was that I'm all heart. And I was looking at you, I'm like, what are you talking about? And it's like,
you are Bob.
and I appreciate that, but I have been hanging out with, I've been a part of EO for 30 years and around very successful people, in many ways. And in the past, I've been comparing myself to them and say, well, I need to be more like them. And that's up here, and that's doing more. And so that was a huge aha for me, that I am all heart. And it's funny because I was a little bit embarrassed, but it's like, but that is different. So when you even said Viva La Visionary and be me, and that's what I coach people. And again, I think a lot of times we coach what we need. So I just appreciate you saying that and saying, you know what? It's okay to be all heart. And again, I was kind of made fun of as a kid. Oh, there goes crazy Bob. And he's, tapping into the magic and cares about people. And so I think I shut a lot of that down. And so that was just very interesting. So again, Viva La Visionary means a lot of things, but it's, and again, it's not yours the same as me, but it's like, you're an individual leader. I am too. How can we help each other? Woohoo. Yeah. So again, I thank you for that of again, being a great mirror for me, which has been awesome.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. I mean, I could say the same ditto. Like, it takes two to tango. I'll go back to that
right.
phrase.
Right.
You pour into me, and it's echoed back in how I also pour into you. And it's this beautiful relationship that.
Well, thank you. And I love how you say we lock arms. So I'm proud and honored to be locking arms with you. So thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your friendship. I appreciate it, Jenna.
Thank you too. Thank you for having me on here.
All right. Have a great day. Peace.
Thank you for tuning in to Viva La Visionary. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and found inspiration in our guest stories. If you loved what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and share the podcast with fellow dreamers and doers. Join us next time as we continue to explore the limitless possibilities of visionary thinking. Until then, keep dreaming big and taking action. Your vision matters.